The impossible just happened. Jon Moxley, Dean Ambrose, the man who swore he would never return to WWE, the man who spent the last 6 years building AEW and burning every bridge with Vince McMahon's company, the man who called WWE a creative prison and said he would rather retire than go back, just walked through the curtain at Crown Jewel 2025 and stood face to face with Roman Reigns. And Roman's reaction, the genuine shock and emotion on the tribal chief's face when his former Shield brother appeared, when the music hit and Moxley walked out in front of 80,000 people in Saudi Arabia, that was real. That wasn't acting. That was Roman Reigns, the most controlled and calculated performer in wrestling, completely blindsided by something he never thought would happen. And when I tell you how this return happened, when I reveal the insane amount of money it took to bring Moxley back, when I explain what this means for AEW and Tony Khan who just lost his biggest star, and when I show you what Roman and Moxley did together that has everyone convinced the Shield is about to reform and dominate WWE like never before, you're going to lose your absolute mind. Let me paint the picture of this moment, because if you weren't watching Crown Jewel live, if you missed this as it happened, you missed witnessing wrestling history in real time. Roman Reigns was in the middle of the main event, defending his newly won undisputed WWE Championship against Cody Rhodes in what was already an incredible match. These two have been feuding for years, and this felt like it could be the definitive conclusion. The match had been going back and forth for over 30 minutes. Both men had kicked out of each other's finishers multiple times. The crowd was absolutely electric, chanting for both competitors, completely invested in the outcome. Then the Bloodline got involved, because of course they did. Solo Sikoa, Tama Tonga, and Tonga Loa rushed the ring, attacking Cody Rhodes while the referee was down. This looked like the standard Bloodline playbook, overwhelming the opponent with numbers, ensuring Roman retains his championship through family interference. Cody was fighting valiantly, managing to fend off two of the attackers, but the 3-on-1 odds were too much. Roman was setting up for the spear, ready to capitalize on the Bloodline's assault and put Cody away, when suddenly the stadium went completely dark. The darkness lasted for maybe 5 seconds, long enough for the crowd to start murmuring in confusion, long enough for everyone to wonder if this was a production issue or something intentional. Then a voice came over the speakers. Not music. Not an entrance theme. Just a voice that anyone who followed wrestling for the past 15 years would recognize instantly. Jon Moxley's voice saying, "You thought you could do this without me, puss? You thought the tribal chief didn't need his brother anymore? Time to remind everyone what happens when the Shield rolls together." The crowd exploded. The noise was deafening. People were on their feet screaming, crying, completely losing their minds because they couldn't believe what they were hearing. The lights came back up and there he was. Jon Moxley, wearing black tactical gear similar to what he wore during his original Shield run, standing at the top of the entrance ramp with that wild look in his eyes that has defined his entire career. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't playing to the crowd. He was locked in, staring at the ring where the Bloodline members were frozen in shock, and Roman Reigns had this expression of complete disbelief on his face. Moxley walked to the ring methodically, not running, not rushing, just that confident stride that says, "I belong here and there's nothing anyone can do about it." He rolled into the ring and immediately started throwing punches at Tama Tonga. The crowd was chanting "holy shit" so loud it was shaking the building. Moxley cleared the ring of Bloodline members with brutal efficiency, hitting dirty deeds on Solo Sikoa, throwing Tonga Loa over the top rope, and leaving bodies everywhere. Then he turned and looked at Roman Reigns. This is the moment that has everyone talking, the moment that defines this entire return. Roman and Moxley stood face to face for the first time in 6 years. The last time they were in a WWE ring together was the Shield's final match before Moxley left the company in 2019. There was so much history, so much bad blood from things said in interviews and podcasts, so much water under the bridge that everyone assumed this bridge was permanently burned. Roman had tears in his eyes. Not heel tears, not crocodile tears for manipulation purposes, but genuine emotion from seeing his brother back in a WWE ring. Moxley extended his fist for the Shield fist bump. Roman looked at that fist for what felt like an eternity, clearly processing 1,000 emotions and thoughts. The crowd was chanting "Shield, Shield, Shield," urging Roman to complete the gesture. And then Roman did it. He bumped fists with Moxley, and the place absolutely lost its mind. The two of them turned their attention to Cody Rhodes, who was still down in the corner, and the implication was clear. The Shield was back, and they were more dangerous than ever. But here's where it gets complicated and controversial. Instead of attacking Cody, instead of reforming their villainous trio and destroying everyone in their path, Moxley looked at Roman and shook his head. He pointed at Cody, then at Roman, and essentially communicated, "Handle your business one-on-one. I'm here to even the odds, not to give you an unfair advantage." Then Moxley rolled out of the ring, stood at ringside, and made it clear he would only get involved if the Bloodline tried to interfere again. He was protecting the integrity of the match, ensuring Roman would have to beat Cody fairly. Roman looked conflicted. On one hand, he had his brother back. On the other hand, Moxley was refusing to help him win, was actually ensuring that Roman couldn't use his typical tactics. The match continued for another 10 minutes with incredible drama and near falls, with the crowd now split between wanting to see Cody overcome the odds and wanting to see what a Shield reunion would look like. In the end, Roman hit a devastating spear and pinned Cody Rhodes to retain the championship. But as Roman's hand was raised in victory, Moxley entered the ring, raised Roman's other hand, and the visual of the two of them standing together was absolutely iconic. Now let's talk about how this actually happened, because the backstory is almost as incredible as the return itself. Jon Moxley's AEW contract was not set to expire until 2027. He was one of Tony Khan's top stars, one of the pillars of AEW, someone who had been with the company since its inception and helped establish it as legitimate competition to WWE. Moxley leaving AEW 2 years before his contract expires doesn't just hurt AEW's roster, it's a devastating blow to the company's credibility and Tony Khan's ability to retain top talent. According to multiple sources with knowledge of the negotiations, WWE made Moxley an offer that was impossible to refuse. We're talking about a contract worth over $20 million per year, making Moxley one of the highest-paid wrestlers in the world. We're talking about creative control over his character and storylines, something WWE almost never grants. We're talking about a schedule that allows Moxley to work limited dates similar to Roman's current part-time deal, giving him time for his family and his other interests. And most importantly, we're talking about the promise of reforming the Shield with Roman Reigns for one final run that would culminate in a WrestleMania main event. That last part is apparently what sealed the deal. Moxley has said in interviews over the years that the Shield was the most creatively fulfilling period of his WWE career, that the bond he formed with Roman and Seth was real and meaningful, and that he always regretted how his WWE run ended without proper closure for that iconic faction. WWE, under Triple H's creative leadership, presented Moxley with a vision of the Shield reformation that would be booked properly, that would honor the legacy of what they built, and that would give all three members the kind of WrestleMania moment they never got together as a unit. But here's the controversial part that has the wrestling world divided. To make this happen, to get Moxley out of his AEW contract, WWE had to pay AEW a buyout fee. Reports suggest this fee was somewhere in the neighborhood of $15 to $20 million, an absolutely staggering amount of money to pay a competitor for the rights to sign their talent. Tony Khan reportedly fought the buyout initially, not wanting to let Moxley go and certainly not wanting to set a precedent where WWE can just throw money at AEW's roster and poach talent at will. But ultimately, Khan accepted the buyout because Moxley made it clear he wanted to go, and forcing someone to stay who doesn't want to be there is a recipe for disaster. AEW fans are understandably furious. They feel betrayed by Moxley, who spent years talking about how much better AEW was than WWE, how much he loved the creative freedom, how he would never go back to the prison he escaped from. They're angry at Tony Khan for letting this happen, for not fighting harder to keep one of his biggest stars, for accepting WWE's money and essentially admitting defeat in the talent competition. And they're worried that this sets a dangerous precedent where any AEW star can be bought out if WWE wants them badly enough, which completely undermines AEW's ability to build long-term storylines around their roster. WWE fans, on the other hand, are absolutely ecstatic. They see this as validation that WWE is the premier destination for wrestlers, that even people who left and swore they would never return eventually come back because WWE offers opportunities no other company can match. They're excited about the Shield reunion, about the dream matches this makes possible, about Roman and Moxley potentially adding Seth Rollins back into the group for the complete trifecta. WWE has been criticized for years about losing top talent to AEW, and now they're getting one of the biggest stars back in a move that feels like a major power shift in the wrestling industry. Roman Reigns' reaction is what's making this feel legitimate and emotionally resonant rather than just a business transaction or storyline swerve. Multiple people backstage at Crown Jewel have confirmed that Roman was genuinely emotional about Moxley's return, that Roman lobbied hard with WWE management to make this happen, and that Roman sees this as potentially the final chapter of his career being written with his Shield brothers by his side. Roman has been very open about wanting his legacy to be about more than just championship reigns and main events, about wanting to be remembered for the bonds he formed and the history he made with specific people. The Shield is a massive part of that legacy, and having Moxley back completes something that has felt unfinished for years. The question everyone is asking now is what happens with Seth Rollins. The Shield was always 3 members, and Seth has been conspicuously absent from this Crown Jewel reunion. Seth is currently on Monday Night Raw dealing with his own storylines and feuds, but there's no way Seth isn't aware that his 2 Shield brothers just reunited without him. This creates fascinating storytelling possibilities. Does Seth feel betrayed and left out? Does he try to force his way back into the Shield? Does he oppose Roman and Moxley, leading to a Shield civil war? Or does Seth eventually join them, completing the reunion but having to navigate complicated feelings about being the last one brought back into the fold? Paul Heyman's role in all of this is also significant. Heyman has been Roman's wiseman and advocate for years, the voice of the tribal chief, the strategic mind behind Roman's dominance. But Heyman also has history with Moxley from their ECW days and from Heyman's time managing the Shield in WWE. Reports suggest that Heyman was instrumental in facilitating the negotiations with Moxley, serving as the intermediary between Moxley and WWE management, and helping craft the creative vision that convinced Moxley to return. Heyman understands how to appeal to wrestlers' egos and ambitions better than almost anyone in the business, and his involvement likely made the difference between Moxley considering WWE's offer and Moxley actually signing the contract. The immediate impact on WWE's storylines is massive. SmackDown just became infinitely more interesting with Moxley added to the mix. The Bloodline storyline, which has dominated WWE for years, now has a new dimension with an outsider/returning member who isn't part of the Anoa'i family but who has undeniable chemistry and history with Roman. Every feud Roman is involved in now has the potential for Moxley to be a factor, either helping Roman or complicating Roman's plans depending on how WWE wants to play Moxley's character. And matches that would have been predictable now have new possibilities because Moxley's presence changes the dynamic entirely. The long-term creative direction depends entirely on how WWE positions Moxley. Is he back as a babyface who keeps Roman honest and prevents the Bloodline from using their typical heel tactics? Is he a tweener who operates by his own code and can't be fully controlled by anyone including Roman? Or is he eventually going to turn heel alongside Roman, reforming the Shield as a dominant heel faction that runs roughshod over the entire WWE roster? Each of these directions has merit and creates different storytelling opportunities. The dream scenario that fans are already fantasizing about is a WrestleMania main event featuring the Shield in some capacity. Imagine Roman Reigns, Jon Moxley, and Seth Rollins reunited fully, either working together as a unit or in a triple threat match where all three are competing for the ultimate prize. That match would draw massive interest, would generate enormous media attention, and would give all three performers the WrestleMania moment they never had as the Shield. WWE could build to this over the next several months, slowly bringing Seth back into the fold, creating tension and drama about whether the reunion can actually work, and ultimately delivering a payoff at WrestleMania that honors the legacy of one of WWE's most iconic factions. But there are risks and potential pitfalls WWE needs to avoid. First, they can't make this feel like a nostalgia act where they're just recreating greatest hits from the Shield's past. Moxley is a different person now than he was when he left WWE. He's grown as a performer, developed new skills, and has a completely different perspective on wrestling than he did 6 years ago. WWE needs to acknowledge that growth and evolution rather than trying to put Moxley back in the exact same box he occupied during the original Shield run. Second, WWE needs to be careful about not overshadowing current stars with returning legends. Moxley coming back and immediately being positioned as more important than wrestlers who have been with WWE for years would be demoralizing for the roster and would send the message that WWE doesn't value homegrown talent. Moxley's return should elevate everyone he works with rather than diminishing them. He should be making stars, creating memorable moments with younger talent, and using his credibility to help build the next generation. Third, WWE needs to have a clear endgame for this reunion. What's the ultimate goal? What's the story they're trying to tell? Is this about Roman's redemption? Is it about settling old Shield business that never got proper closure? Is it about one final ride for the faction before they all move into the next phases of their careers? Without a clear vision and destination, this reunion risks becoming aimless and losing the momentum and excitement that the initial return generated. The financial implications of Moxley's return are staggering when you add up all the costs. The buyout fee to AEW, Moxley's contract salary, the marketing and promotion budget WWE will invest in highlighting his return, the production costs for the premium live events and television shows that will feature him prominently. WWE is investing over $50 million in making this return happen and maximizing its value. That's a massive commitment that indicates how seriously WWE takes this and how much they believe Moxley's presence will move the needle for their business. From a ticket sales and pay-per-view perspective, Moxley's return should absolutely justify that investment. Premium live events featuring the Shield will sell out instantly. Television ratings for SmackDown should spike significantly with Moxley as a featured attraction. Merchandise sales for Moxley and Shield-branded items will generate millions in revenue. And the mainstream media attention from Moxley returning to WWE after such a public departure will provide free publicity and awareness that money can't buy. From WWE's perspective, even $50 million is a worthwhile investment if it delivers the returns they're projecting. AEW's response to losing Moxley will be crucial for that company's future. Tony Khan needs to demonstrate that AEW isn't dependent on any single star, that the company has the depth and talent to absorb this loss and continue growing. Khan will likely push other top stars harder, potentially bring in new talent from Japan or Mexico to fill the void Moxley left, and might even use this as motivation to book more aggressive storylines that differentiate AEW from WWE's product. But there's no denying this is a major blow to AEW's credibility and to Khan's reputation as someone who can protect his roster from WWE's financial might. The wrestlers currently in AEW are probably feeling very uncertain right now. If WWE can buy out Jon Moxley's contract, what's stopping them from doing the same to Bryan Danielson, Chris Jericho, or any other AEW star WWE decides they want? This creates instability within AEW's locker room and potentially makes it harder for Khan to sign new talent or retain existing stars when their contracts come up for renewal. AEW needs to respond aggressively, probably by offering larger contracts with bigger buyout penalties, to prevent this from becoming a trend where WWE just systematically poaches AEW's roster. Moxley's own justification for returning to WWE will be interesting to hear when he eventually addresses it in promos or interviews. He spent years being very vocal about his criticisms of WWE, about how the company stifled his creativity and made him miserable, about how leaving was the best decision of his career. Now he has to explain why he's back and what changed that made WWE acceptable or even desirable again. The most likely explanation is that WWE under Triple H's creative leadership is fundamentally different from WWE under Vince McMahon, that the creative freedom and respect Moxley was denied before are now being offered, and that the opportunity to complete the Shield story is something Moxley couldn't pass up regardless of his previous feelings about the company. That narrative is probably true to some extent, but it also feels like revisionist history designed to justify a decision that contradicts everything Moxley said for years. Wrestling fans are cynical and smart enough to recognize that money and opportunity are the real driving factors, not some sudden transformation of WWE into a creative paradise. Moxley will need to be honest and authentic in his explanation rather than trying to pretend his previous criticisms don't exist or weren't valid at the time. The parallels to CM Punk's AEW departure and potential WWE return are impossible to ignore. Punk also left WWE under acrimonious circumstances, swore he would never return, became a centerpiece of AEW, and then left that company in a controversial fashion. There are persistent rumors that WWE is interested in bringing Punk back as well, especially now that Moxley's return has proven that burned bridges can be rebuilt with enough money and the right creative pitch. If WWE manages to bring back both Moxley and Punk within the same calendar year, it would represent one of the most dramatic talent acquisitions in wrestling history and would fundamentally shift the balance of power between WWE and AEW.